Lagos, the nation's commercial capital. This is the news at 10, live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Good evening and welcome. Tonight, Nigeria throws its doors open to investors as President Goodluck Jonathan gives a blanket invitation to global investors at the World Economic Forum. The Senate takes its turn today as the plenary gets rowdy over the river's security situation. More trouble for the PDP in Kwara State as 20 legislators defect to the All Progressives Congress. And the Syrian government tells the world to hold rebels responsible for all the atrocities that have befallen the country since the conflict began. On business news tonight, President Goodluck Jonathan reveals strategies to encourage smooth bilateral trade relations amongst African countries.
In sports news, Roger Federer sets up mouth-watering clash with fierce rival Rafa Nadal at the Australian Open.
I'm Gloria Umezike from Abuja. Federal government to speed up housing and infrastructural development in the FCT approves 28 billion naira for implementation.
We begin tonight in Davos, Switzerland, where President Goodluck Jonathan was one of the panelists with the Ghanaian President John Mahama and business mogul Aliko Dangote, among others, discussing the privatization drive in Africa. Specifically, the President mentioned government's efforts at improving power, alleviating poverty, and dealing with issues of insecurity in the country. The President is in Davos alongside over 40 world leaders and 2,500 participants. He's attending the forum with a strong delegation from Nigeria, which include ministers and renowned businessmen.
6 billion. Perhaps it's the need to reshape the global economy, politics and business brought together these African leaders to this year's World Economic Forum in Davos.
4 tens, Aliko.
6 tens.
Nigeria's President Goodluck Jonathan highlighted efforts made by his administration to improve power in the country, thereby creating wealth for the majority of the people.
Before this time, even those 36 states are not allowed by law to generate power for commercial purposes. They can't generate for rural development. But for commercial purposes, they were not allowed. Private sector people were not involved in power at all. Even people who generate power for their factories, there are a lot of captive power that are not fed into the national grid because they are not allowed to sell by law. It's only the one generated by the federal government and distributed by the federal government. So now the government can no longer cope, and that's why we moved into the privatization.
Is it working for you?
It's working. The generation and distribution is not exclusively in the hands of the private sector. The transmission is still government, but being managed by a private sector consultant. We've just concluded the privatization, and already Nigerians will tell you that the number of hours that Nigerians enjoy life a day is increasing.
Africa's richest man and the chairman of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, mentioned the importance of investment on the continent and the need to address the growing inequality among the people.
When you look at it, I think today what they need to look at is that, look, there is no government that will be against business. So you go ahead, you invest. The next government that will come in, even after finishing either 8 years or 10 years, they will also be, they are also going to be pro-business. So if they are going to be pro-business, it means that you are not going to really make a mistake by investing.
Because inform Africans what we are doing and what we believe most African countries must do. The lady talks about these policies of government not favoring the poor people. Must we continue to get poor people that cannot afford food, That is one thing you must do. You must create wealth in our societies. It means that you must, in terms of education, in terms of skill acquisition and creating opportunities. Before this time, African countries deal with primary produce, either raw farm produce or raw minerals. We are busy exporting crude oil. We're supposed not to export crude oil. We're supposed to export refined products. These are the areas that create jobs and create wealth, so that the people can afford. The days of government continue to subsidize hydrocarbons, subsidize everything is over.
Other issues raised include lack of trust among member countries in Africa.
You get into the United States, no one asks you about yellow fever vaccination. You get into Britain, no one asks you. You get into Ghana, no one asks you. But Nigerians go into this particular country, they stop them and maybe even deport them. So I call that mistrust and xenophobia, nothing else. Until they required the whole, it was going to create a whole diplomatic role before that country backed down a little bit, then it was resolved.
We put out a statistic that has attracted everybody, that 85 wealthiest people in the world, whom you can sit comfortably on a double-decker bus, own the same wealth as half the population of the world. And we say that there's something wrong with that, not just because it is immoral, but because we also see that those same people, those same companies, actually also hijack political power. And institutions, public institutions, start to work in their favor against the majority.
So this conversation is not expected to end at this forum. What is paramount at this time is to take all the ideas generated and run with it to create the Africa of strong growth and development.
Skills that are
Bolaji Akinwale, the Channels Television News.
Inclusion, economic, social, and political.
Well, before the panel discussion, the President explained to our business correspondent, Harriet Agbinye, that Nigeria is not only open for business, but is also ready to collaborate with international investors in all aspects of the nation's economy. The President says he's happy with developments in the economy, especially the local production of cement and sugar.
You have to tell the Nigerian story. How did Aliko Dangote become one of, I think the number 25 now, the 25 richest person in the world? It's because of the policies of the Nigerian government, because of his massive investment in cement. Before this time, just about few years back, 3 years back, we were a net importer of cement. We are not producing up to 1 million metric tons of cement.
It's about 2 million
metric tons of cement. Our demand for cement is about 18 million metric tons. Now we are producing about 20-something million metric tons over some 3-4 years program, because of the backward integration of government on this the issue of cement. We're having similar programs in sugar. We're creating a similar program in terms of rice and so on. So the Nigerian business environment is now very fertile for people from within and outside Nigeria to come. And that's why we are hosting the World Economic Forum, the African version, to expose the Nigerian business environment to the world, expose the ECOWAS. Of course, Nigeria is the center in terms of investment of the ECOWAS, and indeed the rest of Africa.
President Goodluck Jonathan on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. We're taking you live now to our correspondent Harriet Agbinye, who is standing by in Davos, Switzerland, with the Director General of the Nigerian Economic Summits Group, Mr. Frank Nweke Jr. Hi, Harriet.
Thank you so much. Apart from the fact that I have here with me the Director General of the Nigerian Economic Summits Group, I also have the Chairman of holding Mr. Tony. Both of them are part of the evidence delegation. Of course, we know that they also are part of the economic monitoring team. So they are here with the President, and we're going to be talking about most of what is discussed today. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening on the program. Well, let's just start with what actually happened today during the session. There was a lot of strong optimism about growth in Africa from the panel, where we have the President, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, and of course the President of Ghana. It seems quite interesting, but not a lot of people share this optimism. It feels that there are particular challenges that might hamper the growth that we're expecting. So let's talk on this.
Today's session was very useful in many ways. First is going from the theme of this conference, which is reshaping the world. Especially the Nigerian President spoke about job creation, spoke about wealth creation, spoke about poverty alleviation, spoke about the role of agriculture in driving an all-inclusive growth in the economy, largely manner in a factual form, and also later in the session with the ministers and foreign investors in the country was equally compelling from investors' point of view. If I were a foreign investor in that audience listening to the conversation, I would invest in it. This was a good outcome for the country.
All right, so Frank, I'm going to come to you on this one, even though I know you've been part of government and still very actively working with the government. But you see, a lot of people feel that more and more the government should begin to hands off running so many sectors of the economy. So now we want to know, what are your thoughts? Do you think this inclusive growth that we're actually talking about and job creation should exclude the private sector?
Well, first of all, I mean, we've had a great day here in Davos. Very brilliant outing by Nigeria, the delegation, President.
Well, thanks a lot, our correspondent Harriet Agbinyi, there live from Davos, reporting on the World Economic Forum. And I'm afraid that's much that we can take on her interviews with Mr. Tony Lumelu and Mr. Frank Mweke Jr. Well, Harriet is still in Davos and will be keeping tabs on what is going on and on the discussions, on the panelists and everything else that's happening in Davos, Switzerland. So stay tuned to Channels Television as we bring you updates on the World Economic Forum. But in part two, after the break, the PDP reconciliation begins in earnest as new chairman Adamu Mwazu swings into action. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.